Hi guys, I've been wanting to do content this year and I've decided I won't overthink it. I'll just get on here and talk. I won't even edit this video. I almost went live, but I thought, okay, let me not go live. Let me rather just maybe do a video and then post it. But I won't even edit it. So, yeah, what shall we talk about? Maybe let's talk about horror stories of a project manager. Oh, this thing. I've been a project manager since 2013. Yeah, 2023. 2013, I was doing my first year in university. So anyway, I have been a project manager. Let me try to speak slowly too. I've been a project manager since 2023. So obviously I have my fair share of horror stories from things that maybe freelancers did or mistakes that I did myself, um, or client stories, right? So one story that I can think of now, which I can label as a horror story, is when we once had a project for a very rare language. Maybe I can even mention the language here. I don't think I'm breaking company policy or anything like that. So most we work with the company I work for. We work with African languages, um, which means languages in South Africa as well as Africa as a whole. So we do your Swahili, your Hausa, we do other languages. So anyway, this other time we're working with a rare language, one of the languages that are not that don't have a lot of what do you call it, speakers, and as a result we struggle to find freelancers for such languages. So long story short, we had freelancers on the database. We reached out. By the way, a backstory with these languages is that sometimes to even reach to even get the linguists themselves is difficult, because it's a rare language. There's only a few freelancers that work with that particular language, and an example that I can think of is Nankam. There's a language called Nankam, Nankam. So there's another. I think there's three. Anyway, that I can think of right now, but I'll just make an example. This story that I'm referring to, it was probably either for Nankam, or this project was either for Nankam or what is this, or Kasem, one of the two languages. Anyway, long story short, we had this job. Where do I even start with this story? It's such a long story, I don't even know where to start. But I think we had two projects, one for Nankam and one for Kasem, from the same client. So it's the same files and same everything. But the issue is on Trado Studio, which is, some of you will know what Trado Studio is. It's basically a CAD tool that most companies and freelancers use. So this is a tool that we also use at the company that I work for. Anyways, so I sent this project out. I was the project manager for it. I sent it up. I don't even have a mirror, so this camera will be my mirror. I do have a mirror here actually, but my little friend is using it and I want to keep her occupied so she doesn't disturb me. I sent out this project. Okay, so on Trado Studio, Kasem, let's just say Kasem. I can't remember whether it was Kasem or Nankam, but one of the two. Let's just, I'll use Kasem as an example. Kasem doesn't come up on Trado Studio as a language. So anyone who has used Trado Studio, you will know that there's a list. So you will choose the source language, which is usually English UK or English United States. And then when you set up a project on Studio, and then you have to select the target language. Target language being Xhosa, Zulu, Hausa, Swahili, or whatever language you're working with. But in the case of Kasem, there is no Kasem on Trado Studio, right? I wonder why, by the way. Maybe the people who, what are they called? They're not engineers. The people who create the product or who developed Trado Studio at the time, maybe they didn't know about the language Kasem. That goes to prove again that this language is quite rare. The fact that it's not in the basic settings of Trado Studio. Anyways, so this language is not on Trados Studio. So if you set up a project that includes this language, you will normally have to use another language as an alternative. So for example, instead of choosing Kasem as a target language on Trados Studio, for example, you choose Akan, which is another Ghanaian language. Kasem is a Ghanaian language, by the way. So instead of choosing Kasem, which is the target language that you're actually working with, you might have, we had to choose Akan. So anyways, one of the challenges of working with these languages is that sometimes you reach out to the linguists on email, they don't answer, you have to reach out to them on WhatsApp. Sometimes some of them only answer WhatsApp, and then maybe they go to your email after after you've said, okay, I've been trying to email you, can you please answer my email. Some won't respond via WhatsApp, and then anyway, it's a long story. You have to do a lot of follow-ups, and some of them only answer after a few days after you've been trying to reach out. So by the time a linguist finally gets back to you, there's like a long trail of texts, via email, via WhatsApp. So anyway, in that whole mix-up, that whole communication, sometimes there's a mix-up along the way. So long story short, I sent this task out to the linguist for Kasem. I explained to them that, by the way, when you get to Trados Studio, when you start working on the job, you will notice that the job itself on Trados Studio, it doesn't say Kasem. Like the target language listed there isn't Kasem. But please just ignore that. I only did that because when I was setting the project, or when we were setting the project, because I don't think I'm the one who set it up. Anyway, when we were setting up the project on Trados Studio, there's no Kasem, so we had to choose an alternative language, right? So fine, the linguist seems like they understand. They start working on the project, and then when it comes to, I think we asked them, because again they were getting delayed, and then sometimes when a freelancer is getting too delayed, they're not delivering as soon as we want them to. Sometimes we'll ask them to send, let's say maybe we send them 5 files to translate. So we'll say, okay, since you're saying you can't make the deadline, can you just deliver what you've done so far? Maybe deliver 3 out of the 5 files that I gave you. And then I think, yeah, at some point the linguist delivered some of the files, let's say 3 out of the 5. And then to our horror, and I'm gonna say our because as project managers we normally work together here and there, so maybe anyways, I don't want to get into too much detail. Anyway, the linguist sends back the project, like the 3 files, and to our horror we find out that instead of translating into Kasem, which is the language that we wanted, the language that the client wants from us, this linguist has translated into Akan. Horror, because now what are we gonna do? This is not the language we wanted. This is not the language that the client is paying us for. So now, do we need to pay this linguist for the work, which is a lot of work, but there are a lot of words for the work that he's done, into a different language, which we never asked him to do. We never asked the linguist to do Akan. But again, we feel for him because he's done so much work, spent so much time doing this translation. And where did we fail? Where was the miscommunication? Is it my fault as a project manager? Did I not tell him? Did I not give explicit instructions to say yes? There might be a little bit of confusion because the language I chose on Trados Studio isn't the language that you would expect. It's not Kasem. So now the thing is it my fault as a project manager? Did I not explain explicitly enough to this linguist that no, don't choose Kasem, rather choose, don't ignore the language that's on Trados Studio and use the one that I just told you about on email or WhatsApp, whatever. And also, do you pay the linguist for the translations that he's done now into a different language? What do we do? Again, we are behind in terms of the deadline. So, even though we're behind, oh my gosh, it was actually such a horror. Please don't make noise, Malala. Don't make noise. I'm trying to, let's put this out like this. It was such a horror. So now the thing is, we are late with the deadline. Oh my gosh, I don't have a mirror. I can't even see what I'm doing. are late already, and instead of getting 3 files translated into Kasem, now we have 3 files translated into an irrelevant language that no one asked for. So now we have to go back to the drawing board, meaning we have to either communicate again with this linguist that no, we actually wanted Kasem, or try to find another linguist. But at this point, it's actually almost too late to find another linguist. And like I said before, it's hard to find linguists for these languages, for Kasem, for example. So yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess. It was a mess. I had to escalate to my boss that, hey, this is what's happening. I got into trouble. It was a whole thing. It was a matter of, did you communicate explicitly enough to the freelancer, to the linguist? Because now they've done this work and it's in the wrong language. Yeah, it was a whole thing. So, but that is one of the horror stories that I've experienced as a project manager, where you assign a job to a linguist, asking them to translate into one language, and they end up translating into another language that no one wants. You don't want that language. The client didn't ask for that language. So now you have to do damage control. Lessons learned. What did I learn from that? I think I learned that I don't want to work with rare languages, but a job is a job. I have to. I have to. Actually, I've been getting a lot of jobs into these languages, but anyway, that's a story for another day. Lesson learned is that if you're working with rare languages, excuse me if the word rare maybe triggers you, it's not the right word to use, but I'm only using that to refer to languages that don't have as many freelancers, and they're not as popular as like Swahili, for example. So lesson learned is that when working with these languages, you have to be extra careful. You have to have a lot of time in terms of the deadline. Even if the client says, okay, I want this within 1 week, you have to, from the get-go, tell the client that, I know you want it sooner, but it won't work. That won't happen because it's hard to find linguists for these languages. There's often issues beyond our control. So already from the beginning, I'm just going to tell you that we won't make this deadline. Of course, you look at the number of words required and all that, but yeah, from the get-go, you just know that it's not unlike other languages that, again, I'll make an example with Swahili or Xhosa. If a client maybe gives you a job for 3,000 words and says, I want it tomorrow, as an example, sometimes you can say, okay, we'll do it, we'll try. But if it's Kasem, from the get-go, I just know to go back to the client and say, it won't happen. Because with experience, you just know that this is not the kind of language that you can, it's not a normal language, in the sense that you can't have normal deadlines. We don't have a lot of linguists readily available, and even the ones that we have, it's not always easy to reach them on time. And similar to the example that I just made, something always comes up with these languages. So yeah, that is a horror story. One of my horror stories of being a project manager of a project that I worked on. What did you do? Yeah, there's a whole lot of damage control that we did. But obviously, as you can imagine, I'm sure we delivered that late. I got into trouble. It was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. In my mind, I was like, well, I did tell the translator that we want this language. But I think maybe I wasn't explicit enough. Oh gosh, it was actually a whole story. I was even like, am I even cut up for this job? Because, this is too much. Anyway, that is one of my horror stories as a project manager. yeah, that's one of the lessons that I've learned. The main lesson, honestly, is that working with some languages always comes with challenges that are usually beyond our control. But of course, with experience, you get to learn, get to, have, what do you call it? Like, you just learn, man, and you start to understand what to do to avoid the challenges along the way. Because right now, whenever I'm working with one of these languages, like I said, one of the first things I do, looking at the deadline, which is usually unrealistic from the client side, I always have to go back to say, I understand you want it sooner, but knowing Kasem, as an example, we've worked with the language before, this deadline won't work. That's one of the things that I've learned to do. And secondly, try to be be as explicit as possible in your handover or handoff emails. So when you're sending the job off to the linguist, say it many times in the email and highlight it. Say, on Trado Studio, you will see the language listed is Akan, but please ignore that. Make that into capital, the word ignore in capital letters. Highlight it, and then again, I've done that actually, it's a real life story. And then again, add another sentence saying, please translate into Kasem, English, Aro, Kasem, Ghana, only. And then I put the word only in capital letters. Because again, you can't really blame the linguist 100% for the mistake, because I'm sure no linguist would just say, okay, I'll just ignore the target language that the client wanted and simply do my own thing. So clearly it was a misunderstanding. So I felt some way. I can't really blame the linguist. So where am I going with this? Oh, I was just explaining the lessons learned is that you must be extra clear in your communication with the linguist, and already tell the client that you must anticipate challenges, especially when it comes to the deadline. And yeah, that is one of my horror stories as a project. I have many. Some are extreme, some are not a big deal, but this one, I think this is one of the most extreme ones that I've had. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.